We're back again with another Path to the Draft Hangout. Thanks to our friends at Google. We're joined by Matt Miller of Bleacher Report. He's done a great job of giving us all the insight that we need to know on 49ers.com. And Matt, you've been studying this defensive class of secondary players, impact cornerbacks and safeties. All the talk has been wide receiver for the 49ers, but now that Anquan Boldin is back in the fold, if they go defensive back, where do you see it going, cornerback or safety at pick number 30?
Taylor, I think it could go either way, honestly, depending, especially what happens with Dante Whitner and with guys like Terrell Brown for agency. But the cornerback class this year is much deeper than the safety class. I mean, we obviously have guys like Justin Gilbert from Oklahoma State and Darqueze Dennard from Michigan State kind of at the top of that list, and they're guys who should definitely be gone by pick number 30. But there's a good second tier, whether it's Jason Verrett from TCU or a guy like Bradley Roby from Ohio State, Kyle Fuller from Virginia Tech. There are a lot of quality corners who could still be there at pick number 30, and they kind of come in a different variety. And you have physical press coverage guys, you have speedy guys who can play in the slot. So the corner class this year quite a bit deeper than the safety group.
So the safety group isn't as deep. Last year the 49ers moved up to get Eric Reed. Is there any safety in this class, strong safety in particular, that you see potentially being a Pro Bowl caliber player like Reed was for the 49ers in 2013?
I think there are a couple guys that could play strong safety. Clinton Dix from Alabama. A lot of people list him as a free safety, but I think in the right scheme, he could definitely be a strong safety. And the same goes for Calvin Pryor from Louisville. They're both big hitters. They both have good range, and they could step into a defensive play at that same high level right away. I think they're similar to Reed in that the 49ers would have to come up to get them. But when you have 11 draft picks, you have a roster that's made it as far as they have in the playoffs the last 3 years, they may have the flexibility to package some of those picks. Maybe it's that extra one from Kansas City in round 2. If they liked a guy like Calvin Pryor or Clinton Dix, they could move up and get ahead of teams like Green Bay or Pittsburgh to kind of pull the trigger on one of those impact players.
That's a great point. Trent Baalke, 11 draft picks, plenty of ammunition to move up and move back in this draft. Cornerbacks in particular, Bradley Roby, you mentioned Fuller as well. Those are some of the second-tier cornerbacks. What makes Roby an attractive player at the next level?
Well, Roby, if you go back to 2012, he was one of the best corners in the country for Ohio State and was just almost at a shutdown level. This year, 2013, we saw that drop off a little bit. I think his concentration kind of lapsed at times. Wisconsin's Jared Abbrederis really beat him up in their matchup. But I think Roby, in the right system, if he's playing up on the line of scrimmage and more of a press man coverage scheme, I think he could be a very good player and someone who could start right away out on the edge. The key for corners like Roby is a pass rush in front of them. As Ohio State's pass rush kind of went down toward the middle to the end of the season, Roby struggled, but put him in a defense with Aldon Smith and Ahmad Brooks and Justin Smith, and I think you're getting the pressure that he would need to be the guy who's covering for 3 to 4 seconds instead of 5, 6, 7 seconds.
Matt, we watched the combine drills in Indianapolis, and those are a great opportunity, a showcase for these players to run and jump and show their athleticism. Now that we're in the pro day circuit, what can players do at the pro day to further entrench themselves as a top cornerback or defensive back in this draft?
Well, I think the pro days are just as important, Taylor, and especially to some teams. I know when I was coming up, teams I was with or worked with, the guy's pro day 40 time is the one that stuck with him for the rest of his career. So players who maybe didn't perform well in Indianapolis have a great opportunity to rebound from that. So if you're a running back, receiver, or corner who didn't run particularly well at Lucas Oil, you can make that up on your pro day. And that's the number that a lot of scouts will reference in draft meetings and especially on draft days. So I think in terms of athletic ability, positional drills, a pro day is a more comfortable, more relaxed setting for a player to kind of make up some of the ground if they did lose that in Indianapolis.
Matt, I think it's worth mentioning the guys up front, the big uglies in the defensive line. Last year we drafted Tank Carradine, a Florida State prospect, a second-round draft pick who overcame a knee injury, had a knee procedure in the offseason, looks to be getting back to his old self. Do the 49ers add to that group, or do they look at Carradine and what he brought to the Seminoles in 2012 and look to be building that defensive line with him and not a draft choice?
Well, I was a huge fan of Tank Carradine. Before he got hurt, he was my number 5 overall player last year, and last year was a pretty good draft class. So I think Carradine can be an eventual, guy who you work in rotation, but then can eventually hopefully replace Justin Smith at that right defensive end spot. I would look at the nose tackle spot as maybe an area where they could get a little bit better. I thought Glenn Dorsey did a great job kind of filling in a position he had never played before, going back to LSU or when he was with Kansas City. So I thought he did an admirable job. But if a guy like Louis Nix from Notre Dame happens to be on the board at 30, I think you have to consider it. And I think, everyone in the 49ers front office would tell you depth along the defensive line is so important. If you lose Justin Smith or Ray McDonald, you need it, several guys who can come in and back them up. So I wouldn't be surprised with as many picks as the Niners have if they went to more of a depth mentality in the middle rounds to beef up that front three.
With 11 draft choices, you could almost just go down the depth chart and add a quality player to each position group. And it seems like Trent Baalke and his scouting department, they always value the best player available. So they're never going to force a fit, and it looks like their track record of finding great players every single round of the draft is something to be commended. And Matt, you do a great job of finding great players in all your mock drafts. We're going to be checking that out on BleacherReport.com. What do you have coming up for us in the next couple of weeks here before the draft?
Next few weeks before the draft, I'll be doing a heavy focus on scouting reports, so taking my top 100 players and really breaking them down with more film study and kind of assigning number grades to each thing. So for quarterbacks, I'll be looking at accuracy, footwork, mobility, and actually giving readers a number grade. So on a scale of 1 to 10, Johnny Manziel gets a 10 on mobility, but where is he at in footwork, mechanics? So really breaking players down more and hoping to kind of educate the casual draft fan more about this class.
Sounds exciting. I know we'll all be checking it out on BleacherReport.com. Make sure you follow Matt on Twitter at NFL Draft Scout. He does a great job. Looking forward to all your draft coverage, and hopefully we can catch up with you on another one of these Hangouts the next couple of weeks. Thanks, Matt.
That sounds great. Thanks.